Donald Trump shuts down $37 billion car manufacturers with a bold mandate. In a move shaking the global auto industry, Trump has declared all cars sold in America must be made in America. This bold decision is forcing foreign automakers to rethink their strategies and raising questions about car prices, trade wars, and the future of US manufacturing. Will this lead to a manufacturing renaissance or financial turmoil for automakers and consumers? Let's dive in. What's happening? For years, foreign automakers have been the backbone of the US car market. Companies like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Toyota have built a solid manufacturing presence on American soil. These companies not only create thousands of jobs, but also contribute significantly to the local and national economy. However, despite manufacturing vehicles in the US, a significant portion of their production remains overseas. This has allowed foreign companies to capitalize on lower labor costs, reduced tariffs, and other favorable conditions outside the United States. This dynamic has been beneficial for both foreign automakers and American consumers, who have long enjoyed a diverse range of vehicles at competitive prices. But now, President Trump is changing the game. His new decree mandates that all cars sold in the United States must be made on US soil. This is not just a policy suggestion, it's a command. Trump is calling for foreign automakers to bring their production back to America, fully transforming the manufacturing model that has shaped the automotive market for decades. If these companies wish to continue selling in the US, they must completely relocate their operations to American borders. At first glance, it might seem like a political move aimed at boosting the domestic job market, but the implications are far-reaching. This is a challenge to the status quo of global manufacturing and the economic relationships that have been in place for years. What does this shift mean for consumers? Will car prices skyrocket as a result? What will happen to the vast foreign investments in American manufacturing? The stakes are high, and this policy is bound to trigger massive shifts in the global auto market. Trump's demand for all vehicles to be made in America has shaken foreign manufacturers to their core. But will these companies comply, or will they push back against the new policy? Let's explore how foreign automakers are reacting to this bold directive. The push for Made in America. Foreign automakers, brace yourselves. Trump's new policy will change everything. For decades, brands like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Toyota have tailored their manufacturing strategies to include both production in the US and sourcing from overseas factories. This model worked well for them, with each company striking a balance between building vehicles in the US to take advantage of local demand and managing production costs by relying on international facilities. However, Trump's new policy goes further than simply encouraging local assembly. He's insisting that these companies shift the entirety of their production, including parts, to the US. The mandate goes beyond simple vehicle assembly. It demands that every step of the manufacturing process, from the initial design to the final assembly, happens within the United States. Let's take a look at BMW as an example. Around 60% of the BMWs sold in the US are already manufactured in Spartanburg, South Carolina, but Trump's new demand requires that even their luxury models, such as the 7 Series, be built in the US. This is a substantial shift. BMW will now need to move production for its high-end models, which were traditionally manufactured in Europe, to American soil. The same will apply to other foreign manufacturers like Volkswagen, who already assembled over 90% of its vehicles in North America. Although Volkswagen might find it easier to adapt than other manufacturers due to the high degree of localized production, the policy will still demand that they further integrate their operations within the US in a way that could disrupt their global supply chains. With this bold shift in policy, the global reaction is bound to be significant. How will the rest of the world respond to this challenge from the United States? Let's explore the international implications of Trump's new policy. Global backlash. Could Trump's Made in America policy spark a trade war that changes the global market forever? Trump's announcement has ignited a storm of reactions from foreign governments and car manufacturers across the globe. Countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea, which have invested billions in the US market, are already on high alert. The Trump administration's policy is a direct challenge to foreign manufacturers, forcing them to reconsider their strategies in the world's largest car market. Take Germany, home to major automotive brands like BMW and Mercedes-Benz. For years, these companies have enjoyed the benefits of manufacturing in the US, with their vehicles assembled locally and key components sourced from around the world. Trump's decree, however, means these manufacturers will now need to build everything from scratch in the US, or face the consequences. This isn't just about relocating assembly lines, it's about changing the entire supply chain model that has worked for decades. The stakes are even higher for brands like Toyota, who have a substantial presence in the US car market. Toyota has invested heavily in American plants, but if they don't meet Trump's demands, they risk being locked out of the US market. This creates a massive dilemma: comply with the new rules and bear the costs of relocating their operations, or risk alienating their largest and most profitable consumer base. This standoff between the US and foreign automakers raises an even bigger question. Will Trump's move reassert American dominance in manufacturing, or will it trigger a trade battle that leaves consumers and manufacturers to bear the costs? Now that we've seen how foreign automakers and countries are reacting, let's take a closer look at Trump's broader economic strategy and what this move means for the future of US manufacturing. Trump's economic strategy. Trump's push for Made in America cars is not just about the auto industry. This could reshape the entire American economy. Behind Trump's announcement lies a much deeper economic strategy, one aimed at revitalizing the US manufacturing sector. For decades, American companies have moved production overseas in search of cheaper labor and more favorable conditions. This has led to job losses, factory closures, and a significant decline in domestic manufacturing. Trump's Made in America directive seeks to reverse this trend, bringing jobs back home and reducing the US's reliance on imports. This move is part of Trump's broader agenda to strengthen American industry and promote economic nationalism. By forcing foreign automakers to shift production to the US, he is hoping to revitalize factory jobs in regions that have been hit hard by deindustrialization. States like Michigan, Ohio, and South Carolina, which have long struggled with factory closures, stand to benefit from a resurgence in manufacturing activity. But there are significant hurdles ahead. The rise of automation and advanced manufacturing technologies means that even if production increases, the number of jobs created may not meet expectations. The need for high-tech skills and training programs will be crucial for ensuring that US workers are prepared for this shift in production. The bold Made in America stance might create the foundation for a new industrial revolution in the US, but only time will tell if this strategy can overcome the challenges that lie ahead. As the debate over Trump's economic strategy unfolds, the next question is how this move will affect the everyday consumer. Will this shift lead to lower car prices, or will consumers face higher costs and fewer options? What about foreign automakers? Foreign automakers are facing an ultimatum: comply with Trump's demands or lose access to the US market. Trump's announcement is shaking the foundations of the global automotive industry. Brands like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and Toyota, which have long relied on manufacturing in the US to serve domestic demand, are now in a precarious position. The mandate that all cars sold in the US be fully made in America presents a monumental challenge for these companies, many of which have invested billions of dollars in manufacturing plants located outside of the US. Take BMW, for example. While BMW already produces a significant portion of its vehicles in the US, approximately 60% of the BMWs sold in America are assembled in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Trump's policy demands more. He insists that even the high-end models such as the BMW 7 Series, which are currently manufactured in Europe, must now be produced within US borders. This could represent a significant shift in BMW's strategy and operations, especially when you consider the specialized processes required for luxury vehicle production. Volkswagen, on the other hand, already assembled over 90% of its vehicles in North America, which might seem like a step toward compliance with Trump's mandate. However, increasing production beyond their existing capacity would come at a steep cost. The need to develop new plants or significantly expand existing facilities could lead to massive investments, and these costs could be passed on to consumers. Toyota faces similar dilemmas. With a substantial presence in the US, Toyota will now have to rethink its strategy, ensuring that all components for their US models come from American facilities. In short, foreign automakers now have a stark choice: relocate production entirely to the US or face penalties, including tariffs and trade barriers that could impact their ability to access the lucrative US market. The outcome of this battle could dramatically reshape the global automotive landscape. As foreign automakers grapple with this new directive, American companies are closely watching the situation unfold. Could this be their moment to rise above? Let's dive into how US automakers might benefit from this shakeup. The opportunity for U.S. automakers. This is the golden opportunity American automakers have been waiting for. Will they capitalize on it? While foreign automakers struggle to comply with Trump's new Made in America policy, U.S. carmakers may find themselves with an unprecedented opportunity to dominate the market. The policy's heavy demands on foreign brands could open the door for Ford, General Motors, and even Tesla to capture a larger share of the automotive market, particularly if foreign manufacturers raise prices or scale back production. Ford, for example, has been doubling down on American-made trucks and SUVs, products that are hugely popular among U.S. consumers. With foreign brands potentially scaling back or increasing prices, Ford could step in to meet the demand. The policy's emphasis on Made in America could be a key selling point for Ford's products, allowing it to market its vehicles as authentic, high-quality American-made cars. With more emphasis on domestic production, Ford could ensure that their vehicles remain affordable while still meeting the growing demand for American-made products. General Motors, while historically known for its focus on electric vehicles, could also benefit from this shift. If GM ramps up production of hybrids and gas-powered vehicles, which still have a massive market in the US, they could appeal to a broader consumer base. Tesla, which already manufactures a significant portion of its electric vehicles in the US, could be forced to adapt further, especially as foreign competition for the electric vehicle market increases. Despite its advanced technology, Tesla could find itself facing competition from a more localized automotive industry. As U.S. automakers prepare to take advantage of these new opportunities, let's look at the broader economic implications of Trump's bold policy. How could this affect the economy as a whole? Economic strain and opportunity. Trump's policy could revitalize American manufacturing, but at what cost to consumers and the broader economy? Trump's Made in America decree carries significant economic implications, not just for the automotive industry, but for the entire U.S. economy. On one hand, the push for domestic production could stimulate job creation, particularly in manufacturing sectors that have been in decline for decades. States like Michigan, Ohio, and South Carolina could see a boost as investments pour into the revitalization of local automotive plants. These jobs could help reinvigorate communities that have suffered from factory closures and the offshoring of production. However, the economic benefits are not guaranteed. The increased cost of manufacturing in the U.S. due to higher labor costs, regulatory hurdles, and logistical challenges will likely raise the prices of cars. Consumers who have grown accustomed to affordable foreign-made vehicles may find themselves facing significantly higher sticker prices. This could result in a shift in consumer behavior, where some buyers might choose to delay purchases or opt for smaller, less expensive models. Additionally, consumers may face fewer options in terms of luxury or niche models, as automakers may prioritize high-demand, high-profit vehicles to recoup increased production costs. Beyond car prices, the ripple effects of this policy could extend into other industries. For example, businesses in the logistics, construction, and retail sectors could see a boost as the demand for parts, supplies, and vehicles increases. However, other sectors, especially those that depend on cheap foreign imports, might suffer. A rise in car prices could negatively affect industries like ride-sharing and delivery services, which rely on affordable transportation options. Furthermore, the possibility of retaliation from foreign governments in the form of tariffs or trade restrictions could create economic turmoil that spreads far beyond the automotive sector. With potential economic strain on the horizon, let's take a closer look at what this policy means for the consumer. How will everyday buyers feel the impact of Trump's bold mandate? What this means for you? Could Trump's policy transform the car buying experience into a costly affair? For American consumers, Trump's Made in America decree could bring both positive and negative outcomes. On the positive side, the policy could foster a sense of national pride as consumers support American-made products. Many buyers may feel compelled to choose vehicles that are entirely built in the US, in line with the president's call to reinvigorate American manufacturing. However, the downside of this policy is the likely increase in car prices. Shifting production to the US will raise manufacturing costs, and these costs will inevitably be passed on to consumers. Experts predict that the price of vehicles could rise by thousands of dollars, especially for luxury imports like Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and BMW. Even American automakers who already have a presence in the US may face higher production costs, which could result in price hikes for popular models. Moreover, this policy could reduce the variety of vehicles available in the US. Consumers who enjoy the diverse selection of foreign-made cars may find themselves with fewer options as automakers focus on high-volume, high-profit models. Luxury cars, sports sedans, and niche vehicles may disappear from US showrooms, leaving buyers with a narrower range of choices. As the US car market adjusts to this shift, consumers will need to weigh the pros and cons. Will the increased price tag for American-made cars be worth the potential economic and patriotic benefits? Or will consumers find that the policy creates more challenges than it solves? With the immediate effects on consumers becoming clearer, let's shift focus to the broader global consequences of Trump's mandate. How will the international automotive market react? A trade war brewing. What happens when a single policy announcement sends shockwaves through the global economy? Donald Trump's bold declaration to make all cars sold in America domestically produced has sparked widespread reactions, not only from foreign automakers but also from governments around the world. Countries that have long relied on trade with the United States are now facing the possibility of significant disruptions, leading to what some fear could be the beginning of a global trade war. For decades, countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea have invested billions in the US automotive market. Companies such as BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and Hyundai have built factories on American soil to produce vehicles for the local market. However, these operations often rely on a network of global supply chains, sourcing components from multiple countries to optimize costs and maintain efficiency. As nations brace for the potential fallout, automakers are scrambling to adapt. How will they respond to these unprecedented challenges? Adapt or perish. Imagine being told to uproot your entire business or risk losing access to one of the world's largest markets. What would you do? For foreign automakers, Trump's announcement represents a seismic shift in their business models. Companies like BMW and Toyota, which have long been global players, are now faced with a difficult decision: invest billions to comply with the new mandate or risk losing access to the lucrative US market. BMW, for instance, has already invested heavily in its Spartanburg, South Carolina plant, which produces SUVs for the global market. Roughly 60% of BMWs sold in the US are assembled domestically. However, Trump's demand goes beyond assembly. It requires these companies to source a significant percentage of their components from within the United States as well. For high-end luxury models like the BMW 7 Series or the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, which are currently manufactured overseas, this poses a major logistical and financial challenge. Volkswagen, which assembles over 90% of its US sold vehicles in North America, may find it easier to comply. However, they would face increased costs as they work to localize their supply chains further. Meanwhile, Japanese automaker Toyota, despite its strong presence in the US, might need to reconsider its global manufacturing strategy, especially for models built in Japan. With automakers grappling to adapt, the ripple effects of these changes are beginning to reach American consumers. What does this mean for the everyday car buyer? The consumer's dilemma. Could Trump's policy make your next car the most expensive one you've ever bought? For American consumers, the impact of Trump's mandate will be felt most acutely in their wallets. The shift to domestic manufacturing will drive up production costs for automakers, and these costs will inevitably trickle down to the showroom floor. Experts predict that car prices could rise by thousands of dollars, particularly for foreign brands like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi. Even domestic manufacturers like Ford and General Motors might struggle to keep their prices competitive. The increase in car prices isn't the only concern. With automakers rethinking their strategies, consumers could see a reduction in the variety of models available in the US market. Luxury models, niche vehicles, and limited editions that were previously imported may disappear altogether as companies focus on high-volume, high-profit vehicles to offset rising production costs. On the flip side, Trump's policy could lead to a resurgence in domestic manufacturing that benefits American automakers. If companies like Ford and General Motors can capitalize on the demand for American-made vehicles, they could strengthen their market position and offer more competitive pricing. However, the success of this strategy hinges on their ability to meet consumer expectations for quality and affordability. While consumers grapple with these changes, the broader question remains: what will this policy mean for the future of the automotive industry and the American economy as a whole? A shifting landscape. The long-term implications of Trump's policy are both promising and precarious. On one hand, the mandate has the potential to spark a manufacturing renaissance in the United States, creating jobs, revitalizing communities, and reducing dependence on foreign production. On the other hand, the economic strain of such a dramatic shift could have unintended consequences for the automotive industry and the broader economy. For US automakers, this policy presents an opportunity to reclaim dominance in their home market. Companies like Ford and General Motors, which have deep roots in American manufacturing, could position themselves as leaders in a new era of Made in America innovation. Tesla, already a pioneer in electric vehicles, might see this as a chance to strengthen its American identity by investing further in domestic supply chains. However, the challenges are immense. Automakers will need to navigate the high costs of domestic production, the logistical hurdles of relocating supply chains, and the evolving demands of a tech-driven industry. The push for electric and hybrid vehicles adds another layer of complexity, requiring significant investments in research, development, and infrastructure. The success of this policy will ultimately depend on the ability of automakers, consumers, and policymakers to adapt to a rapidly changing landscape. Will the benefits of increased domestic production outweigh the costs? Can the US automotive industry rise to the occasion and lead the world in innovation? Or will the strain of these changes push the industry into a protectionist corner, stifling growth and competitiveness? As manufacturing seeks to make a grand comeback, the ripple effects extend far beyond factory floors. How will this seismic shift reshape global trade dynamics? A new era of economic alliances. What happens when one nation's policy reshapes the balance of global trade? Trump's mandate has already sent shockwaves through international markets, forcing foreign automakers and governments to reevaluate their strategies. Countries that have long relied on the US as a major export market for cars and automotive components now face a stark choice: comply with the policy or risk economic fallout. Germany, Japan, and South Korea, home to some of the world's leading automakers, are particularly impacted. These nations have invested heavily in global supply chains designed for efficiency and cost-effectiveness. Trump's demand that production shift to the US threatens to upend these systems, creating tension on an international scale. The possibility of retaliatory tariffs looms large. Germany, for example, has hinted at imposing tariffs on American goods, potentially targeting industries like agriculture and technology. Japan and South Korea are exploring similar measures, raising concerns about a global trade war. But amidst the tensions, new economic alliances are forming. Countries in Europe and Asia may strengthen ties to offset the disruption caused by Trump's policy. Meanwhile, South American nations like Brazil and Mexico, known for their robust automotive industries, could emerge as key players in global trade, offering alternatives to US-made vehicles. While the global stage adjusts to these changes, how will America's workforce respond to the challenges and opportunities presented by this policy? Rebuilding America's labor force. Is America ready to meet the demands of a high-tech manufacturing resurgence? At the heart of Trump's policy lies the promise of job creation. By bringing car manufacturing back to American soil, the policy aims to provide a lifeline to workers in regions devastated by factory closures and outsourcing. However, the nature of these jobs is evolving. Modern automotive manufacturing relies heavily on advanced technology, including robotics, artificial intelligence, and precision engineering. While this increases efficiency, it also reduces the number of traditional assembly line roles. To succeed in this new landscape, America's workforce must adapt. Investments in education and training will be critical. Community colleges, trade schools, and apprenticeship programs will play a pivotal role in equipping workers with the skills needed to thrive in a high-tech industry. Additionally, partnerships between automakers and local governments can help create tailored training initiatives that address specific workforce needs. Despite these efforts, challenges remain. Will displaced workers from traditional manufacturing backgrounds be able to transition to high-tech roles? Can the American education system keep pace with the rapid advancements in manufacturing technology? These questions will determine the success of Trump's vision for a revitalized labor force. Donald Trump's bold mandate has set the stage for a dramatic transformation in the automotive industry, the economy, and the lives of everyday Americans. The stakes are high, and the challenges are immense, but so are the opportunities for innovation, growth, and reinvention. What do you think? Will Trump's policy reignite American manufacturing, or is it a gamble with too much at stake? Are you ready to pay more for a car if it means supporting American jobs, or do you think there's another way forward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters.